A very good evening and welcome to the West Ham Voice, the West Ham Weekly on a Monday night. Thank you all for joining me as usual. Quite a bit of news, not all of it very good to be quite honest with you, but I'll bring you an update on all the latest stories West Ham related. But first of all, whether you cared for it or not, you have to admit the end of the World Cup was certainly ended with a bang. And one of the most memorable finals I think we can remember for a very, very long time. And well done to both Argentina and to France for serving up a spectacle. And congrats, of course, to Argentina for becoming world champions for the third time in their history. And if anything is to go by, the last time world champions won the Jules Rimet back in 1970, Brazil got to keep that particular trophy, which then created the new trophy that Lionel Messi is holding. So are they going to follow suit? And now that Argentina have won that trophy, they'll keep it for good and then create a new trophy for the World Cup in 4 years' time? I guess if protocol serves, then that should be the right thing to do. But fantastic play from Argentina and fantastic play from France as well. It was a memorable final, despite all the political war going on off the pitch. You've got to admit it did end brilliantly. And well done, Argentina, as much as we hate to admit it. We also had another new. Not another new. We had Mbappe scoring the second World Cup final hat-trick. But as we all know, Sir Jeff's hat-trick was much, much better because he didn't need any penalties to score his hat-trick with, whereas Mbappe needed two. But no, congratulations to Mbappe as well. That was a good achievement from him too. Now, of course, it's amazing that West Ham again served to win the World Cup because Lionel Scaloni, ex-West Ham United player, got Argentina to the final and also got them to win. I mean, after such a short space of time in managing the Argentinian squad, that's a great achievement in itself. Anyway, the World Cup is over. We can get back to looking at domestic football and the trials and tribulations of West Ham United and, what's going to happen in the second half of this season. So on tonight's show, going to talk briefly about the very last game that we played, friendly game that we played against Fulham. Give you a bit of a lowdown on what I thought on some of the players there. And also all the latest player news, all the player injury news, loan news, etc. And of course, with only something like 14 days to go before the January transfer window opens. Oh, yes, here we go again. I'm going to bring you all the latest but I'm actually not all the latest transfer stories, but only the ones that I think are pretty pertinent and relevant to West Ham United in terms of what we need in the squad. Let's get on with it. Let's say hello to people in the chat first of all, before we go into the first part of the show. So let's go all the way up. Oh, you're first again, Foxes. How are you? One consolation, wasn't Diop proper rubbish? Yeah, but Diop didn't do us a favour because he's the one that tackled Scamacca. Anyway, Foxes again. I'm not too worried about up front. Just want a solid back four so the rest of the team can shine. I would be inclined to agree with you there, mate. And I'm a little bit worried about the back four. Foxes again. I don't want the likes of Dawson or Zuma playing bone on bone because his knee is shot, or Bonner, who is looking like he's done. Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the game and I'm going to talk about our defence. Our defence is the thing that kind of worries me as well, mate, to be quite honest with you. Good evening, Bernie. How are you? Happy Christmas to you all as well, because I don't know if I'll be able to do another live show before Christmas comes. My God, that's only at the end of this week. So happy Christmas to you, all of you, by the way. And thank you all for supporting me throughout the whole year. It's been a fantastic year. So thank you. I do hope we start to play better than before the World Cup. So do I, as we have just been dreadful in truth and look like a relegation team right now. There are certain parts that aren't looking good, but I think one thing that I've seen from the friendlies, certainly up front, Foxes has already mentioned it. I think we're doing reasonably okay. I think midfield as well, actually, but it's defence that I'm worried about. Good evening to you, Graham. How are you? From Alberta, where it's minus 27. God, it was really warm today in London. It's about 15 degrees. I popped out for a few things, and I was like, hang on a minute. I don't need a coat. What's going on? Minus 27 with a wind chill of minus 40. Hopefully you have good news for us, but I doubt it. Unfortunately, I might make you feel a little bit colder. I'm sorry to say. Good evening to you. It's not worth it. How are you, mate? Thank you for joining. Good evening, Stuart. Hi, hello to you, mate. Mum's doing okay in a care home. She's coming via taxi for Christmas on Sunday to my sister's. As far as other things are concerned, I would be advised all West Ham fans to follow Russell Brand. Okay. I listen to him every now and again, but good advice and good luck to your mum. My mum's back in hospital again at the moment, so I feel for you, mate. I really do. And a great World Cup, absolutely. It was superb. And good morning to you, Neil. I hope you're well, mate. From rural South Australia, 7:30 a.m. Tuesday morning. Where is you bastard? It's only 27 degrees. Have you got a jacket on, Neil, just in case you feel a bit cold, mate? It's not worth it. If the news is that Scamacca will be missing for 3 games, for example, it's not that bad. I'll get to that in a minute, mate. In real terms, that would only mean he's missing for 1.5 games because Moisey don't play him for the whole game anyway. Well done. Good evening, Peter Chelmsford. How are you, mate? As Fraser said on Dad's Army, we're doomed. Captain Mannering. Good evening, Howard. How are you, mate? I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Good evening, Debbie and Mark. Debbie and Mark, good evening to you. Thank you for joining again. I hope you're well. And good evening to you as well, Paul. How are you, mate? Mr. Barrett, how are you? A very happy Christmas to you as well, mate. What a World Cup final we had. Looking forward to time. I'm not so sure that when I've come to finish the West Ham Weekly, you would have been looking forward to it that much. But thank you for joining. Good evening to you, Learn to Dig. I hope you're well, mate. Antonio kicked him, touched him, looked at him, was near him. Get him out of the club now. He's responsible for all my shortcomings. Can't blame Antonio for anything at the moment, mate, to be honest with you, because he's injured. Fashionably late as you. I was a little bit late. I do apologise for that. Where's Cornet? I'm going to talk about him, but yeah, where is Cornet? We now know what's wrong with him, so I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm feeling like I can study to become a doctor. You know, all this stuff I'm looking at on the internet about injuries and grade 1s and grade 2 and grade 3 injuries and how long a player's going to be out for and what signifies a grade 3 tear and all that sort of stuff. Christ, I'll start operating on people soon. It's not worth it. Sweepstake for Stelstar. You're going for 908. You might have won there, I think. I think it was around that time I got on. Peter, Cornet doing his usual injury-prone, bad attitude impression of a footballer, which has been all his career. What a shame, because I was actually, in a way, I was actually quite excited that Cornet was, because I remember last season when someone mentioned Cornet, and I went, I don't know much about him. Then I saw him play against us, and he missed that penalty. And I thought, okay, but he actually looks quite good. So I became quite interested in him, but I didn't know anything about his injury record, to be quite honest with you. What time did I come on? I didn't know. Debbie and Mark. I believe Billy McKinley said after one of the friendly games that Cornet will still be out a couple of games after the World Cup. He indeed will. I'm going to give you an update on the player injury news and give you a prediction of when I believe they'll be back. And that is based on sort of the stuff I've heard, the stuff I've been told, the stuff I've read online and all that sort of stuff. Graham, Paul Evans, they seek him everywhere. Learn to dig. Is this how I can spin Antonio is flash into a football ready? Well done for doing it, Learn to dig. I hope you will. Oh, good evening, Mr. Dodsey. Late, my friend, as usual. You know, Sharky. I still don't. Sharky has volunteered to be a moderator on the chat, and thank you, mate. I can't find you. I know you're there because I can see you, but for some odd reason, YouTube doesn't allow me to find your profile. But I'm working on it, mate. And thank you for asking to do it. I really appreciate that, Peter. And by the way, if there's anyone else that wants to become a moderator, do let me know on my email address, westhamvoice@gmail.com, and we'll look into it. Why not? Peter, when we lose the first 3 games back, they will rue not sacking Moyes. Well, he's been talking to Sully about players in the World Cup, so it doesn't look like he's going anywhere. They're going to trust him. I've just written another script for a different show, which is coming out hopefully tomorrow. And I'm going to try and explain why I think they're keeping Moyes, because it sort of goes beyond just the first team. So it'd be better explained when you watch the video. So do look out for that. That's coming up soon. Good evening to you, V Night. I wish everyone Merry Christmas and Moyes out. Yeah. Merry Christmas to you as well, V Night. Henry, good evening to you. With Moyes in charge, Scamacca isn't very important anyway. Oh, we've started early. Sharky, Argentina won't get to keep it, I've heard. That is a bit strange, isn't it, Sharky? Because like I say, the Jules Rimet, when that was won 3 times by Brazil, they told them it's theirs. Now, in fairness, Argentina have won, I don't know if they got a name for this trophy, but in fairness, Argentina have won this trophy 3 times. So strictly speaking, it should follow suit. But interesting. Henry, from Vinay, maybe not the good news is that Scamacca is fit. Dodsey, 3 friendlies and the same poor performances, especially in the first half. I'm worried still. I disagree, to be quite honest with you, Dodsey, because I thought the first 2 games we played, I think we did well, especially against Udinese. I think the first half of this game, the Fulham game, I agree with you, but I thought again we got better as the game wore on. And I know that's very similar to pre-World Cup. Peter, you would have thought Scamacca would have been able to create stuff himself. Ala Arnie, he's not that type of player, is he? That's the problem. That's the concern. It's the problem. You know, you buy a player, and I'm going to talk about some of the players that we're linked to in the January transfer window, strikers. You know, and you can see a difference as to Scamacca's not that Wayne Clyde. He needs to feed off players, doesn't he? He needs to have players around him that kind of are in the same wavelength. Paqueta, Fornals, I think Fornals did reasonably well, etc. Those sorts of players may work better with Scamacca. Good evening, Jovi. How are you, mate? Good to be back to domestic. It is in a way. It is. Well, it is and it isn't, because like, I'm really apprehensive. You know, it's a game. The first game comes up this week, next week, Monday week, and against Arsenal away. I'll be there, so there won't be any West Ham Weekly, by the way, next Monday night, because I'll be at the game. But I'll bring you the West Ham Weekly on the Tuesday evening instead. Tony Hammer, good evening to you. Went to Brazil, then got nicked and never been found. Did it? Is that true? I didn't know that. Nice jumper. Thank you, mate. It's an old one. It's the old commemorative, I don't know, something, a couple of years back. Martin, an awful country, but a great World Cup. Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Bong. How are you? Thank you for joining, mate. Good evening, Lee. Hope everyone has a great day. It's not been bad for a Monday, I guess. It's been pretty warm. Good evening, Daniela. How are you? Mr. Scarborough, how are you, mate? Thank you all for joining. And Trodge is here as well. Right. Why don't we get into the first part of the show? And that, of course, is a kind of review on the match against Fulham. So the game against Fulham at the weekend, I missed the first half. I had a few domestic issues and I wasn't sure if we were going to make it. I took the missus to the game as well. We missed the first half getting there, and but I caught up with people. Dodsey gave me a bit of a rundown because he was at the game, and a few other people, and I saw the highlights, etc., to try and get a picture of the first half. And I agree, Dodsey's already mentioned it, that the first half wasn't great. It was a little bit sort of like, here we go again, a little bit lackluster, you know, players behind the ball, etc. And of course, we lost Scamacca very early in the game. Like the lineup, okay, we've still got half a dozen odd players missing because of the World Cup. And the good news, I guess, is that they're all back in training, apparently, as from Tuesday, which is really, really good. So Declan's back and Paqueta's back and all the others, Alphonse, Areola, etc. All the players that were at the World Cup will be back in training, I believe, on Tuesday. I wonder if Areola might be given just a little bit more time off because of being involved in the final, and Gerd as well. But you know, the lineup, it's what we've got left, I guess. You know, Soufal, Dawson, O'Connor and Emerson at the back. And in midfield, Lanzini started alongside Souček with Fornals, Bowen, Benrahma supporting Scamacca. And then we had a smattering of young players. We got Heggie, the under-21s keeper, on the bench alongside Ekwa.
Shame we get to see him again. Ashby was an interesting one because all these rumours about Harrison Ashby going, and yet he was named on the bench. And then Levi Lang, the central defender, Swire, Potts, Forbes, and Mbama. So we had a number of young players on the bench. And of course, when we get to all the players back from the World Cup, etc., you're not likely to see many, if any, of the young players on the bench in the games coming up in the Premier League. And I guess given the where we're at in the league, Moyes is going to go for experience as much as he can to get us out of this situation. You're not likely to see him rely on any of the youngsters to sort of help us out this predicament that we're in. Anyway, onto the game itself. That was the lineup, quite predictable. And like I said, it didn't take long before we lost one of our players. Yet again, have these friendlies been good or bad for us? Because we've lost Creswell, we lost Antonio, all right, not during a game, but during training before a friendly. We've lost Scamacca as well. It's not looking good with our team and injuries at the moment. And I think Scamacca, from what I understand, he turned his ankle, and more on that a little bit later. Now, Moyes had a choice to make. He could have brought on Divine and Barmer to play up front and give that young lad a good run around and see what he's capable of. But I kind of, going back to what I just said about getting experience, this game for Moyes was more about giving the senior players a little bit more game time, match fitness, etc. So it kind of didn't surprise me that he brought Flynn Downs on to take his place and then put Bowen up front. Look, Bowen playing up front, I think we're going to need him because with the injuries that we've got on both Antonio and Scamacca, Bowen might have to be our makeshift striker, maybe for some time to come. And to be quite honest with you, Bowen looks quite sharp when he plays up front. He's never really let us down as a striker, anyway. And he knows where to put the ball away, and he does get more involved, I guess, than Scamacca does with regards to playing alongside the midfielders. So I understood why Moyes wanted to bring Downs on, and I think Downs had a really good game, to be quite honest with you. I think Downs was pretty decent, but the players, like I said, and I've sort of alluded to it earlier on, that concern me somewhat is defence. Craig Dawson has just not been out. I know he's been out injured a few times this season, but when he's been back, he just hasn't looked right. I think Ogbonna, I love him to death, but I think Ogbonna, his time is gone with West Ham. If he ever had any pace, he's certainly not got any left in him anymore because he's slow in turning. I think he's dependable. And ironically, between the two of them, if I was inclined to say who would be a more solid defender at this moment in time, it's got to be Ogbonna, to be really honest with you. I'm worried about Dawson. I'm worried about what might be going on in Dawson's head. We know, we keep hearing stories about the fact that, he was due to leave in the summer. And if we get a replacement lined up in January, he almost will certainly leave. And I would just wonder if that's taken its toll on him. Sometimes a footballer at a club has been, can be there for one season too long. And I've suggested this before that quite possibly with Dawson being at West Ham this season might just be that one season too many for him, and it might have been a better opportunity to sort of let him go in the summer. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate Dawson. I think he's been fantastic for us. He's certainly won me round. I was surprised when we went for him ever in the first place, but he's certainly turned it around. He's been a superb servant to West Ham United, but I just wonder if this might be a season too many. He just doesn't look at the races. But Ogbonna, with that serious injury that he suffered last season, he's certainly slowed down. He certainly doesn't have the pace to challenge Premier League strikers. I worry if Ogbonna starts next Monday, and it's quite possible that he will. Players like Saka will probably run rings around him, and it does concern me. I think our defence is a massive concern. I said it at the start of the friendlies against Cambridge. I repeated it against Udinese. And again, unfortunately, I haven't seen anything to suggest that our defence is going to get any better as time goes on. We're in desperate need for players to come back. Kehrer, Agerd, hopefully. Well, not hopefully. We know he's fit. So that will make a massive difference. Other players in defence, I think Soufal had a pretty decent game, to be quite honest with you. I think he did okay on the right side. I think Emerson, I'm even hating myself for saying this, but I think Emerson is becoming the Italian Masuaku. I just don't think, as a left wing back, I think he's fine. As a left back, he's no replacement for Creswell. And it's how ironic is it that we still haven't found a proper replacement for Aaron Creswell in all these years that we've been looking. It's weird. We certainly had an opportunity to do so in the summer transfer window and went for Emerson. I quite like the thought of Emerson coming in actually, but as a wing back, but not as a left back. And I think actually, and seeing that Ben Johnson came on later in the game, I think Johnson is more likely to start as a left back for us in the game against Arsenal than Emerson will, unless Moyes changes the formation and maybe goes with a back three with wing backs or back five or whatever. But I just worry about Emerson. I like him going forward. I think he's pretty decent going forward, and I think he's got more end product than Masuaku had going forward. But I just don't necessarily think he's got it as a left back, to be quite honest with you. So it worries me. I think we're in desperate need of players to return. The likes of, like I said, Kera and Agerd. I think it's going to stand us in good stead. And seeing what Agerd did during the World Cup, I mean, if he brings even half of that level of performance to West Ham United, I'm going to be very, very happy. And that is an area that really concerns me. Other areas, Flynn Downs, I just mentioned him. I think he had another decent game, to be quite honest with you. I think he's looking good. He's looking like he fits in. He's not looking like a player that needs any more time to sort of settle in. I think he's settled in. I think he's showing true good performances for West Ham United, and I think that stands us in really, really good stead. I just think he was pretty decent in midfield. I think, and ironic, some people won't agree, but I think alongside Souček, isn't it strange that Thomas Souček looks better when Rice isn't playing? I don't understand that logic, and I'm not. Don't get me wrong for a minute. I'm not suggesting that all of a sudden Souček is, the heir to replace Rice for good. If Rice is sold in the summer, that's not what I mean. But it just it almost feels as if he steps up when Declan isn't there. I find that weird. That in the first season and a half together, they were superb anyway. And then something changed, and we all know about, system change, and Rice was allowed to go more forward and all that sort of stuff. But I want to see Declan Rice when he comes back to do the job that he does for England. Just sit and spray the ball, win the ball back, and let other players go forward. It's not because Declan can't do it. I just think what we need right now is that type of player, and Declan is the best at that, without a shadow of a doubt. But it is interesting that Souček seems to sort of like adapt his game when Declan Rice isn't there. And alongside Flynn Downs, I think they both did pretty well. I think they were superb. So that's it, really. I'm not too bothered about the result. It didn't matter if we won, lost, drew, whatever. It was more about the run out, and it's more about looking at the way we played, etc. I think our front line, I think Ben Rama looked sharp. There was a point point later on in the game where he could have won it, and he dithered. I don't know what, just fucking whack it. And he sort of almost like he froze. But other than that, I think Ben Rama looked decent. I've said Bowen. I think he looks really good. He's back. He looks back to the Jared Bowen that we kind of gotten accustomed to. That first few months of this season, just like thankfully seemed to have passed him by. I think Fornals had another decent run out, and it was also quite interesting to see Fornals on the right side. I've been talking about using Fornals more as a number 10 just behind Scamacca, but he also did pretty well on the right side as well, which gave us a different option, and that was good to see as well. So our attacking play, I think, is pretty decent. Our midfield, I think, is pretty decent. Fabianski's Fabianski. And of course, the concern I've got is our defense. But like I said, I think it'll be good when we have our defenders back, Agerd, etc. And maybe that's the bit that's currently missing, to give us that solidity at the back in order to help push forward. Right, that's it. That's all I'm going to say about the game, because there's not much more to say about it. The result didn't matter, etc. So I'm going to get on to player news and so on, which I know you're all looking forward to. But let's go back into the chat and see who else is there. Good evening, Peter. How are you, mate? Nice of you to join. Trodge, press release with Moyes answering questions, saying how communication is so important. Could you please tell he couldn't wait to get out of there at the end? I did watch it earlier today, and it was interesting. I think he tried to keep it a bit lighthearted, didn't he? But I think what really interested in me is like I think it put to bed that the whole issue about Moyes in, Moyes out, is he going to be sacked or not? Clearly not. You know, if he's talking to the manager, if he's talking to the owners, Sullivan, about players at the World Cup, clearly they're talking for the future. Look, of course, results are going to matter. Of course, you know, they're not going to be forgotten about. You know, if he doesn't get good results in the first few games coming up, then it could still be curtains for him. But as it stands, it looks like he's pretty, I don't want to say comfortable, because it's not a comfortable position that we're in. But I think it's quite telling that Moyes feels like he's got the backing of the board. Peter, let's get your comment up. No, mate, they're old. They need replacing, actually. James, I knew an Alberta once. She was pretty... Oh, dear. The jokes are already started. Let's go down. Good evening to you, Andy. How are you? Here's my conspiracy theory. Moyes declares pretty much all first-team squad unavailable for the next 3 games. So he says to the board after losing the 3 games, please don't sack me because I ain't... Well, actually, he doesn't need to... I've worked it out. It ain't good news. I've worked it out. And you're going to carry on from that saying, please don't sack me because I ain't got any players available. So the 3 games David job rolls on and on, still trapdoor. You are a conspiracy theorist. Good evening, Owen. How are you? Cornet is a sorry excuse for a professional athlete at this point. Can be a great player, but dear goodness, it is odd, isn't it? Goodness knows what the hell was going on. I really don't. I really don't. But I'm going to talk about all the players in a moment. Learn to dig. Moyes is secure because Mark Noble is a rookie director of football. Well, it's not just about it. Well, I wonder actually if Noble has had some say in whether Moyes should stay or go. Maybe. It's not worth it. Did you see the PR video West Ham put out with the question? I did, yeah. He actually had the gall to say communication is very important. But yet several players, he doesn't talk to them. This really interesting, this whole thing about Soufal, and he hasn't spoken to me. But Soufal's been picked quite a bit lately. So I think, I think it's happened, hasn't it, with several players where Moyes has been accused of not talking to them. And I spoke about this a few weeks ago. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. But different managers have different ways of managing their players. You know, clearly some players think Moyes is, fantastic in the way he manages them, develops them. And clearly some other players don't get that love, do they? Lingard didn't seem to get that love. So that's why I went to Notts Forest, apparently. As someone, I read a joke. Well, it wasn't a joke. I read a comment on Facebook. If you got any more love, from Moyes, there would have been a sex scandal going on. It's like, it's weird, but I don't know. I don't know what. I guess this is Moyes. Maybe he doesn't like confronting. Apparently, we hear that he's quite straightforward talking, etc. But maybe, quite possibly, when it comes to sort of dropping players, we know how loyal he is, don't we? And I wonder if he finds it difficult to turn around to a player and tell him that you're not playing, and to give him a reason. I don't know. But the Soufal one was interesting. Ed, good evening to you. Thank you for joining, mate. Debbie and Mark, at the moment, just need to stay behind Moyes and back him to hopefully turn things around. If he doesn't, and the board decide to bring in a different manager, then I totally back that decision too. Same. I think people have misunderstood me. I have backed Moyes, to be quite honest with you. I have, but more maybe than some others, and more to my detriment as well. But I have backed Moyes as well. But I'm not like, if Moyes goes, then all of a sudden I'm going to stop supporting West Ham. For me, it's all about West Ham. It's not all about David Moyes. And you're absolutely right. I back him until he's no longer a manager. Once he's no longer a manager, you back the next manager that comes in, don't you? Unless it's someone we really don't want. Daniela, would you think of AWB linking for 50 million? No, thank you. Going to talk about him. He's one of the very few Aaron Wan-Bissaka stories that I'm going to mention. Good evening, usual. I hope you're well, mate. Thank you for joining. Yeah, you've joined the Degenerates, and they've already started, haven't they? Cracking jokes. It's early in the day. Dodsey, any truth that the rumours that David Moyes does not talk to players? Soufal says this. He didn't know why he's not playing regularly. I can tell him why. If he's not good enough, you don't play, do you? Once you're good enough, you do play. Soufal's back in the team. I agree, Dodsey. I do find it weird that Moyes doesn't pull him to one side and say, "You're dropped," because maybe that is a bit weird. But each to their own. Tony, good evening to you. Got nicked in 1983. The bottom of it was found by the rest. Got melted down. I really didn't know that about the Jules room. Wow. Look at that. Fucking hell. Henry, does anyone have any spares for the Arsenal game? Sorry, mate. Unfortunately not. Keith, Galispero to you. I hope you're well, mate. Debbie and Mark, I think AWB on loan wouldn't be too bad, Daniela. Would be great to cover for Soufal and possibly even might do a Jesse Lingard and re-spark his career and form. I'm going to tell you why I don't think we're going to get him in a little bit later on in the show. Thank you, Lee. I'm shit at this. So if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. And if you're not new, hit that like button tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lee. Sharky, I imagine a loan deal will be the club's preferred option. Talk about transfers in a moment. Tony, Areola does not need time off. He's had off more time than anyone else. He hasn't played a minute for 4 to 6 weeks. That's very true. Andy, Dawson wants away and is playing like a player who wants off. Let him go. I agree. I do agree. But you know what? We are kind of short at the back. And I kind of guess I understand that Moyes wants to hold on to him. And I think if Moyes had an option to replace him in the summertime, I think he would have done. James, good evening to you. Moyes has gone stale. I don't think he can turn it around. Even if he loses the next 3 games, the board just don't like pulling the trigger. Look how long it took with Mr. Pellegrini. Well, yeah, good point, James. I mean, they did pull the trigger on Bilic and Pellegrini around about the same-ish time, November, December time of the seasons that they were in charge. So that time's come and gone. I think they... please do watch when I put the show out tomorrow about David Moyes and why I think the board are keeping him beyond just what's going on at the club. I think the club are saying to themselves, we understand this is a transition year. We might have to suffer. We don't think we'll go down. So we're gonna hold on to Moyes because there are other things that are going on in the club in the background, which makes me think why they're holding on to him beyond this season. Debbie and Mark, I think Ogbonna and Dawson go in January and Luzau that we assign could be brought in to be a replacement for one of them rather than chucking him in. Unfortunately, you're thinking wrong because Luzau will go straight into the development squad is what we understand. Vinay, if Moyes relegates West Ham, then trust the process. There is a cunning plan. I don't think, I know never say never, but I really don't think we will get relegated. But, you know, Tom, good evening to you. As Souček is not going to be dropped ever, can the Jokosaurus at least put him in the back 4? I'd rather actually he'd go further up forward. You know, so I want, when Paqueta comes back, I want to see Paqueta playing alongside Declan, you know, because that's where Paqueta was better in the World Cup for Brazil. So I'd rather Paqueta plays alongside Declan, push Souček up front as a sort of I don't know, like a number 10 or something. Yeah. Paul, Downs, easy, the best new signing. Need to play him more. I agree. I think he's been fantastic. I totally agree. Good evening, Victor. How are you? Could Rice play centre back against Arsenal? He most certainly could, if need be. That's a really good shout. You know, that's a really good shout. That's very, very possible. Very possible. It's not worth it. I know. I choked when I even said it. Learn to dig. Brings me back to the prejudice comments about Antonio pre-season. Most West Ham fans deserve relegation. Most West Ham fans deserve relegation. I don't think there is a prejudice on Antonio per se. I think, you know, we talk about Antonio and other players. If they're playing well, they get praised. If they're not playing well, they don't get praised. And I don't think it matters who it is in the team. I think we've had a number of players that have been underperforming, not just Antonio, to be quite honest with you. James again. We need our players back firing on all cylinders. I just hope our players come back will be motivated. I think so. I tell you, there's one player from the World Cup that does worry me slightly at what his attitude might be. And ironically, that's Paqueta. I think Declan will be okay. I think Kehrer will be okay. He's had enough time to sort of get over Germany being knocked out quite early. I think Agerd will come back buzzing because of how well Morocco did in the World Cup. So the player that kind of worries me is Paqueta's attitude. You know, I don't mean that in a sulky way, but he just, you know, I think Brazil expected a lot more, and I just wonder how the World Cup might have affected him. Graham, I don't think we're likely to see our first team players getting us out of trouble. I don't think we are likely to see our first team players getting us. We better do, because that's all we got. Trudge. Let's get that comment up if I can. But we only start 30 or 4 minutes into the match. Same pattern, since I don't think. I mean, I know Dodsley's been to a few away friendlies over the last few weeks, and I've only watched them on TV. I was at the Fulham game on Saturday. I think against Cambridge and Udinese, we were a bit more on the front foot pretty early. I think against Fulham, we did kind of revert back to how we were before. Mice, we have to be patient with Moyes. We owe him so much. He has done so much. He has, but it's all about the here and now, isn't it? Trudge, I see no sign of slow starts being addressed. I did in the early games, but I agree. I didn't see that against Fulham. Daniela, I understood why some are unhappy with the first half of the season, but we do need to get behind the team now or we really will be in trouble. And there are a lot of games to play. There's so many points to be had. James Bond, nice to be back and see all the positive comments from the chat. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Sharky follows it up with a 7-2-1 formation against Arsenal. Probably wouldn't surprise me. Scarborough. Well said, Daniela. Far too much doom mongering amongst fans at the moment. There is. I can understand it, but I do get it. Look, we're fourth from bottom. I get it. You know, we're not doing well. We haven't done well. I've got a good feeling about the second half of the season, but then again, I had a good feeling about the first half of the season too. Mr. Osborne, how are you? I hope you're well. Thank you for joining, mate. Learn to dig. Slag the players who you thought were getting replaced, then ask them to give everything for you because your favourites out injured. Well, they're professionals, and I've slagged off a lot of players in my time, and I know a lot of people have as well. But it's, you know, I think fans are, you know, we're emotional, aren't we? We see what we see. We're not professionals at this game. You know, our comments are our comments. They're not professional comments because the coaches, the manager, etc., see much more than we see. We only see the 90 minutes on the pitch. We might get a glimpse of them in training when they, you know, when the club put out a little video about the training and or a few photos, etc. But we don't get to see the nitty gritty. And what matters is more about the manager and the coaches and what they think of the players. We can have our say. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. Scarborough, Soufal wasn't moaning when he was playing week in, week out 18 months ago. Maybe it's just not being good enough. Exactly. If you're good enough, you play. If you're not good enough, you get dropped. Right, let's leave it there and move into the next part of the show because I know you're all dying to find out about player news. So, where do we start? There are no fewer than 5 or 6 players carrying knocks of one kind or another at the moment. And given that we're about to restart the Premier League campaign again, and that's the last thing we want, isn't it? I mean, you know, I asked a little bit earlier on, have the friendlies been good to us or bad to us? Isn't it? Doesn't it always seem to happen only to? I'm sure it doesn't just happen only to West Ham, but it feels like it does. Every time we play a friendly game, every time we play a game that's of no importance, all of a sudden we pick up injury after injury after injury, and it's a concern because we started off at the Cambridge game and we lost Aaron Creswell, and he walked off 10 minutes into the 4-2 win over Cambridge 13 days ago, and there were concerns about his hamstring. Now, since then, he hasn't featured in either of the squads against Udinese or Fulham. Didn't expect him to. And on Creswell, McKinley said, Creswell went off at Cambridge with a tight hamstring. He's progressing well, but this game came a bit too early for him, giving him a chance to be involved in Arsenal. As mentioned last week, I'm starting to get really interested in the grades of injuries. I mean, how sad am I to be researching hamstring injuries? But there you go. And I said, if it was a grade 1 hamstring injury, he should have been back by now. Because a grade 1, it will only be about a week or so because it's very mild. So I've got the feeling that it's probably, and I'm only guessing because I haven't been, this particular one hasn't been confirmed to me, but I'm only guessing that it's a grade 2 hamstring injury because that normally takes about 3 weeks to recover, which sounds about right because he may or may not be touch and go for the Arsenal game, as McKinley said. He's been out for 2 weeks. If he's out for 1 more week, he may not be back just in time for the game against Arsenal. And I think it's already been 2 weeks, and I don't rate his chances of coming back. And I think it's more likely he could be back for the Brentford game at the end of the month, or quite possibly the Leeds United game on the 4th of January. Now, I guess a little bit of good news, if we... Oh boy, do we need it, is we know that Agerd is back. And we were all worried in the semi-final that he was going to be played against France, but thankfully they rested him. They did name him, didn't they? But then they withdrew him at the last minute, but he did play in the third and fourth place playoff against Croatia at the weekend, and he looked fine. He looked absolutely fine. He's come back to West Ham, or he's due back to West Ham on Tuesday, and everything looks okay. So that's a bit of good news that we got a Gerd back. Now, what I want to see is the amount of effort. I mean, he's been fantastic. Probably one of the best defenders in the World Cup finals, to be quite honest with you. I think he's been fantastic. And what I'd like to see is for him to replicate that that endeavour, that effort in a West Ham shirt. And fingers crossed, because I think he could be a massive player for us, which is really, really good news. Now, Kurt Zuma, as I said a few weeks ago, nothing's really changed. Last week, I talked about the type of knee surgery he had, which was an arthroscopic knee washout, which it said, when I read about it, takes up to 6 weeks to recover from. And given that he had that surgery in the last week of November, he won't be back till round about mid-January after training, etc. So I think we're likely to see him maybe for the Wolves game, I would hope. If not, then the Everton game on the 21st of January. Right, the missing man, the invisible man, Maxwell Cornet. I mean, how many times has he been almost back and then not back? And now we find out he's got a calf injury. Okay, so Billy McKinlay again spoke of Cornet's injury, saying that the player won't be fit for another few weeks, which means he'll miss the next few crucial games, definitely against Arsenal, quite possibly against Brentford, and quite possibly against Leeds. So it looks like he won't be back till, again, mid-January himself. Given that he's got a calf injury, again, this sounds like a grade 2 calf injury where there's a mild tear, a moderate strain, mild tear. And this usually takes between 4 to 8 weeks to recover. Now, he got injured in October, and the 4 to 8 weeks was almost about the time he was about to return to the first team when he was training back with the team. Now, he's had a recurrence of this in some way, so it looks like a relapse means, because he's feeling some discomfort, etc. He could be, he's already missed 2 months. It's quite likely he's not going to be back until the early to mid-January. Maybe, if we're lucky enough, we'll see him for the Brentford game in the FA Cup rather than the league. Mikel Antonio, another player that pulled out of the game last week through injury. McKinley didn't mention Antonio in his post-match press conference after Fulham. And there's a suggestion that there's nothing serious and he'll be back in time for the Arsenal game. And I really hope so. I really do hope, because all the other injuries, again, are classified between 1 and 3. And he's got a thigh strain, and it's suggestion that he's got a grade 1 thigh strain. Now, a grade 1 thigh strain takes 3 weeks to get over. And he's been out a week, so it's another 2 weeks. So it doesn't look to me that he will be back for the Arsenal game, to be quite honest with you. It sounds as if he probably won't be back until the beginning of the new year. So we're not likely, I hope I'm wrong, but we're not likely to see Antonio in the game against Arsenal next week, and quite possibly not likely to see him in the Brentford game at home the week after. Right. Gianluca Scamacca. Well, yes, you read this right. Could it be that he now won't be back until the end of January? Now, I was talking to someone earlier on who knows stuff and told me that he's got severe swelling on his he turned his ankle. He rolled his ankle during the game against Fulham. And he kind of hobbled off. He didn't look in too much discomfort, but it's so bruised, it's so swollen that they're not able to scan it. And when that's the case, when there's quite severe bruising, it sounds like it could be possibly 4 to 6 weeks out before he's back. Again, I hope not. Again, I hope I'm really wrong. But looking at the information that's given to me, and given the fact that the club haven't been able to scan the injury, it looks quite possible that if he's got severe swelling, that could be a 4 to 6 week out. And that might mean he's not back until the end of January. Again, I hope I'm wrong. Look, this is just information I've cobbled together. I've been told, it's been confirmed that there's severe swelling. That is confirmed. And when there's severe swelling, you can't scan the injury because the swelling won't show the injury that's been caused. So they can only assess what's wrong with his ankle once the swelling goes down. The swelling, if it goes down tomorrow, if it goes down the next day, he'll then be scanned. But it sounds to me, I'm looking at the worst case scenario here. it sounds to me that if it is severe swelling, he might not be back until the end of January, and that's bad news. That really is bad news, to be quite honest with you. So things aren't good. Things aren't good on the player front. All these players out. Clearly, what's going to happen is I don't think. Well, I'm going to talk about transfer news in a moment. I don't think we're going to get that many players in, if any, to be quite honest with you, in January. But if we do, I think a striker is going to be far more important to get than any other position that we're looking at enforcing in the January window. I just want to mention one young lad before we move on to other news, and this is about Ollie Scarles. Clearly he a player for the future. He signed his first professional contract last week, and he's been with West Ham since the age of 11 after being dropped by, guess who? Chelsea. Yeah, they seem to get rid of a lot of decent players, don't they? And he talked about, signing for the club, how the club have made him feel a better person, both on and off the field, the coaches, the manager, etc., etc. And he acknowledges that things will take time. He knows that. He's only just turned 17. But the buzz, he talked about his first trip with the senior team to Anderlecht, even though he didn't play. And he was sitting next to Declan Rice on the plane and making him feel relaxed, etc. And then, of course, FCSB, and he played there. And we know how superb he played. So good luck to this young lad. I think he's going to be superb for the future. Couple of known stories. Armstrong Oko-Flex, misspelt, came on again in the game against Coventry at the weekend. Coventry took a 3-goal lead. Oko-Flex was introduced on the 51st minute. And it was his shot that was parried to fall into the path of Jay Fulton, who lashed it home for 3-2. And then they made it their way back. And they're now just 2 points off the playoff places. And well done to Oko-Flex. We've been worried about his performance and getting a lack of game time. So for him to come on and be quite influential, I think was really massive for him. And another player that's doing exceptionally well in the championship is Emmanuel Longello. He was in action against Reading, where they won 3-2. Pretty dominant. They're doing really, really well. They moved up to 8th place in the championship, and Longello is having a fantastic season for Birmingham City, and he'll be back at the end of the season. We've got an option to extend his contract for 1 more year, and now here's a replacement for Aaron Creswell. It might not be time for Scarles, but certainly if Longello continues the way he's carrying on, then certainly it might be his time. Right, before I talk about transfers, let's go back into the chat and see what else we got here. That's not worth it. December the 12th, 2019. West Ham board back Pellegrini. December 29th. West Ham sacked Pellegrini. Yeah, they did it pretty quick. There you go. It was December. I thought it was. Scarborough. Ben Rama has been one of our best players for a while, and Moyes has pushed him to be better. Wow, interesting. Good evening, Epic. How are you? How can anyone possibly still believe that Moyes is going to turn things around? It's not whether we believe or not. We just know that he is going to be there for the duration now, and he's not been sacked. The board have decided that they're not going to sack him. And so we're going to have to hope that he can turn it around. Let's just get rid of that. Bear me 1 second. Thank you. Mice Collective. If Moyes doesn't get 3 points in 3 games, he will have the same points as per Pellegrini when they pulled the trigger. Hey, I'm not saying that he won't be sacked. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that. I'm saying what they clearly have demonstrated is that many people thought that the board had the opportunity to get rid of Moyes during the World Cup, and it would have looked like the right thing to do. Get rid of him, bring a new manager in. He'll have 4 weeks to sort of acclimatise, decide what he needs in the January transfer window and all that sort of stuff. They didn't do it. They believe in Moyes as a bigger project, and he's here. Whether we believe or not, whether he can turn it around or not, he's here, and well, hopefully he will turn it around. Anthos, how are you, mate? I hope you're well. Haven't seen you for a while, Anthos. I hope you're well. Thank you for joining. Good evening to you, Will X. Don't say we have more injuries. What is it? I know it's worrying. I mean, thankfully, ironically, we haven't had any players coming. Even Gerd, having been injured during the World Cup, is coming back fit. So thank God that we don't have any more injuries because of the World Cup. But it's really odd, Antonio, Creswell, now Scamacca. It's a concern. It's a concern. Peter, Soufal had some problems with the club regarding improved contract early last season. Still hasn't been resolved. No, it hasn't. That's interesting. I've gotten rid of it, James. I hope you've subscribed. Matt, good evening to you. With all the injuries and out of form players, it's going to need a miracle to turn things around. Moyes is not the miracle man. He may not be, but at the moment, he's all we have. It's really interesting though, because I think, interestingly, in the friendly games, I think two players have actually looked to have found some form. I think Souček has, interestingly, and I think Bowen has, definitely, and I think that's massive. Having those two players, return with a little bit of form, I think is an encouragement. Dodsey, so Stella, are we all in for the Brazilians, not the haircut who we're buying in January? Who's going? Well, no, we've only got the one Brazilian, but I'm going to talk about the other Brazilian that we're apparently getting, but we're not. Mice, I'm off this as a Moyes bias channel. You're not. Well, sorry, mate. It's not a question of me being Moyes biased. I'm talking about what this, what's happening. I'm not Moyes in. I'm not Moyes out. As far as and everyone's welcome to their opinion. Like I always say, if you're Moyes out, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. If you want to leave the channel because of it, that's your prerogative. Howard, Stell's on 10% for all the new customers. I wish I'd make a lot of money out of that. Daniela, well, I don't know, actually, would I? Daniela. Anyway, Merry Christmas, Vera. Have a joyful and fantastic one. You're not going already, are you, Daniela? It's not worth it. The question is, the question isn't why Soufal was dropped. It's why doesn't Moyes explain it to him? Yeah, fair enough. Alex Kroll said the same. Fair enough. Communication team with players is an essential quality for a manager. I do agree. And like I said, different managers have different approaches, different ways of doing things. And I don't think it's right, to be quite honest with you. If I had a member of staff in my team at work who wasn't doing well, I'd want to speak to them about it and explain what needed to be improved. So I get it. I don't disagree with that at all. Joseph, good evening to you. If we start against Arsenal the same way we started in those friendlies, it will all be over by half time. See, Anthos, the Brazilian will need about 4 years to bed in with Moyes, 2 years being subbed like Benny if he's not a Moyes signing. You're probably not wrong. Adam, Lucas Paquetá. Well, apparently that's how I used to say it, and I was told I was wrong. Now I'm saying it's Paqueta. And I actually looked at his interview, and he says Paqueta. So there you go. Anthos, having no strikers will be Moyes' excuse at the Emirates. Well, you never know. False number 9, we might end up scoring 3 goals. I know. Let's scroll down. Anthos again. Sounds though we're West Crocked United FC. It's worrying. It really is. The friendlies, this is the double-edged sword with friendlies, isn't it? With friendlies, you want to get players match fit again, but then the double-edged sword is if they get injured, you're absolutely buggered. Good evening to you, Ian. Hope you're well, mate. Good evening, Billy Bob. I hope you're well too. Anthos, no point in buying another striker. Moyes will play him on the wing or left back. Sharky, the injured players can fill themselves with plenty of Christmas dinner. Well, yeah, I guess. Oh, God. Joseph, I wonder what it is you see in Moyes that almost nobody else does. It's not, don't get me wrong. Look, I've tried to explain my position and Moyes has left the channel because of it. Look, I'm supporting the manager, who the manager is at this moment in time. It's not a question of whether I think he's the right manager or not. He is the manager at this moment in time. Do I think he'll turn it around? I'm worried. I won't lie to you. And I did say quite a few weeks back that if we were still languishing near the bottom of the league come the World Cup, I'd be extremely worried and I'd be starting to veer to perhaps us looking at an alternative manager. But I don't have that say. We don't have that say. The only people that have to say as to who manages the team are the board. The board have decided that they want to stick with David Moyes. Is that right? Is that wrong? I guess we're only going to find out as the season progresses. If it's wrong, we'll suffer for it. Do I think we'll get relegated? I'm not so sure, to be quite honest with you, but it'll probably mean a poor season. But a poor season will mean that we've got to compensate in some way. So if for example, we finish, I don't know, let's say we finish 15th in the league, for example, what the return I want to see in that is for us to win a trophy. And we've got every chance of winning the Europa Conference League. We're still in it. In the last 16, there are going to be some tough teams to play against. But if we win a cup, and we finish sort of 15th or something like that, I'm going to go, it was shit, but we've won a cup and I'm all right with it. Let's build on next season. if we go out of the cups, the FA Cup, Europa Conference, don't win either of those, and we're still languishing and we just scrape relegation, I'm going to go, that was really shit. The board really going to have to look at the situation and move Moyes on. But look, it's not because that makes me Moyes in. It's the manager is the manager at this moment in time. If West Ham United decide that they want to get rid of Moyes tomorrow and they bring in someone else, fair play. Then I'll support that manager as well. We don't have a say in it. You know, I think a lot of people like to think that they've got a say in who's going to manage West Ham. We don't really. We can protest. We can do this, that, and the other. Yeah, the board might knee jerk every now and again, like they did when they brought Pellegrini in. That didn't work, did it? I think they might have learned their lesson from that and go, well, we're not going to knee jerk anymore. You know, and I just think there are certain things that are going on beyond the first team, you know, that Moyes is involved in. And I think possibly that's why they're seeing Moyes as a project. They know that this season's not going to be great. We can see that. There's an awful lot of talk well before the season started that was a season of transition. That doesn't make me Moyes in. It makes me Moyes in while he's manager. When he's gone, he's gone. You know, and then we'll support the next manager that comes along. But it's not, you know, do I think he can turn it around? Ironically, and I know this sounds really, really stupid, but ironically, when we were in trouble twice before, under Bilic and under Pellegrini, who did they call in to get us out of that situation? David Moyes. So do I think he can turn around? I think he's certainly got it in him, you know, and I'm hoping that he does turn it around in the second half of the season. If he doesn't, and if we let him go, farewell, Moyes. Welcome the next new manager, and I'll back the next new manager. I don't know if that makes it clearer or not. I'm not so sure. I think I've got this, and I know other channels have spoken about this channel being a Moyes in. It's not a question of that. It's you support the manager that's the manager at the time. Right or wrong? I don't know. I guess we're only going to find out at the end of the season. Sorry for the lecture. I didn't mean to. James, if the injury is this long, I'd bring on the kids. Can't see Moyes having much choice. He may not have, unless we do strengthen with players in the summer, in the January transfer window. But I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Let's scroll down. Joseph. Okay, I heard it now, Stell. Fair enough. Have a nice day. I don't know what you've heard, but anyway, there you go. I don't get it. You know, the whole idea of this channel is always to allow people to have their say. Whether you agree with it or not is irrelevant. You know, everyone has the right to their say. It feels as if people are expecting me to jump on the Moyes out bandwagon. I won't do it. I won't do it. I won't. I've never said I will, and I won't do it. If it means losing subscribers, then so be it. You know, it's your choice. You have a right to listen to whoever you want. If you want to go to the other channels who talk about Moyes out all the time, hey, that's your prerogative. But I won't do that. You know, I will try and talk in a balanced way. I've criticised Moyes before. I've praised him and I've criticised him, but I don't really understand what you people expect of me. I'm not going to jump on the Moyes out bandwagon. I refuse to do it. You know, I think the one thing that we lack on social media at the moment is to be able to have balanced conversations. I think it goes either one way or the other way. There's all these extremes that go on, and it feels like you've got to jump on an extreme in order to be accepted. I won't do that. I think if Moyes is continuing to take us down on a downward path, of course I'll turn around and say it's time for him to go. And I'm close to that. I won't lie. I'm not happy with the way things have happened. Of course I'm not. But there is still hope. There are still more than half the number of games in the Premier League to be played. And there's an awful lot of points to be played for. Can he do it? It's possible. It may not, but we never know. Sharky. Bowen has a forever ongoing groin strain. I wonder what's causing that. Ed, I'd love to see Mbama get a decent outing. I would too. I like him. I think with Mbama, you're very likely to see him go out on loan next season, hopefully smash it and then come back and stake a claim in the first team. But I like him. I like the way he moves, his positioning. You know, he's always trying to sniff out a goal. You know, in the game against FCSB, the way he played, you know, he's always like, you know, looking for that opportunity. I think he looks like a fantastic little player. Pete Gads, that Moyes video that West Ham United posted on YouTube makes me think he's staying. He is, for the time being. James, hi from LA, 1:54 in the afternoon, Monday, and back from a game of golf to get my mood upset with our latest injuries. I'm so sorry about that, James. Thank you for joining, and I really appreciate you doing so. I hope you had a good game of golf as well. Eamon, I'm Moyes in for now at least. The players are still playing for him. Until that changes, I will back him. Moyes has been unlucky with injuries as well. You said it better than I did. I just went into a little bit of a moany rant. Sharky, hopefully they're just short-term injuries. I think some of these injuries are short-term. It looks like players will be back in a few weeks. Thankfully, nothing beyond January. But, January is such an important month. Anthos, can't we approach the tea lady at West Ham? She's cheaper than Moyes and even plays the players in their right position. Dodsey, Moyes bias. Wow, far from it still. Twitter and YouTube channels driving a divide. Love clickbait. It is what it is, isn't it? There is a massive divide happening. It's such a shame, really, as well. I don't know. You're still... Oh, thank you, Daniel. I'm glad that you are. Eamon. If Gerd didn't get injured, I think we'd have a better start to the season. Cornet going missing hasn't helped either. I agree with that. I think Moyes was really looking at look who he bought. Who was the first player he bought in the summer transfer window? It was a Gerd. It was just a Gerd. Like he was not looking anywhere else. He wanted a Gerd in because I think in his mind he had a certain style of play that he wanted to adopt at West Ham, and it's all got thrown out of the window when a Gerd got injured. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should be a one-man team, of course not, but I think a Gerd was quite pivotal to how Moyes wanted to set West Ham United up. Any news on that? Actually, you know what? No, I should really. I'm disgusted with myself. I should really look into that because I know he's still out injured at the moment. Eamon again. I think we signed this young Brazilian to help Paqueta to settle in better. That's a good point. Yeah. Good evening, Garino. How are you, mate? I hope you're well. Paul might say, I think so. What can I say? I can't force people to listen to me. It's up to you. If you think I'm Moyes in and you don't like it, by all means. There's plenty of other channels to go and watch and listen to them, talking about Moyes out and how many managers, are lined up to replace him. Anyway, Debbie and Mark, just wondering with everyone in the chat, if Moyes does get the sack, who do you think will be the perfect manager to have to take charge? I've got a list, but they're not on this show. And I do apologize for that because they're on another script which isn't in front of me. But look, I'm going to put the show out tomorrow. It's been pre-recorded and everything. Watch it. I'll put it out tomorrow. There's some interesting stuff in there, even if I say so myself. Garino, strange. We're getting all these knocks just before Christmas. Are you thinking something different, mate? Funky T, good evening to you. I hope you're well. We at least have to give him a season to get the vertically knee team working. Let's see where we're at the end of 34-24 season. People want instant results, need a bit to be resistant. It's a good point that, to be honest with you, Funky T. We do have to, what are we as a team? I remember asking this earlier in the season when, what do we believe West Ham is meant to be? Now, all right, we spent £150 million in the summer transfer window. Does that automatically make us a top 4 team? No. If we spend £150 million every summer for 3 or 4 summers, then absolutely we should be knocking on that top 4 door. But once in a blue moon, spending that sort of money and then expecting, we forget that only 2.5 seasons ago, we almost got relegated. We've had a phenomenal 2 seasons, without a shadow of a doubt. Phenomenal. And I don't think any of us really thought that we would have such a phenomenal 2 seasons. It's not good right now. It's shit. Let's not deny it. It is shit. I'm not denying that. I'm not turning around and saying that actually, you know what, it's all okay because, it don't matter. Of course it bloody well matters. We have played shit. I'm really expecting us to be completely different. With Moyes there, and if it doesn't happen, he will get the boot. Because if he doesn't get anything from the next 3 games, it's going to be very, very, very touch and go whether he survives that. If he gets absolutely 0 from the next 3 games, and they're not easy games, away to Arsenal, at home to Brentford, for some godforsaken reason, always seem to turn us over, and then away to Leeds. It's quite possible that he'll get nothing from the next 3 games. I would be expecting the board to be very, very ready to pull that trigger. Have we missed an opportunity? Depends on what manager may have been available, what manager may be available in January. Who knows? But it will be touch and go. Ian Carter, still no, mate, no way. Bernie well said. Thank you, mate. Trodge. We don't need to defend. Well, I actually think I do, mate. I think there's people that watch this show who just think I'm an idiot because the way I talk, because I haven't jumped on that Moyes out bandwagon. I just think I did. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sort of go into one, but I just think it's weird that fine, people can watch what they want to watch. I don't, of course I care and I like people to stay on, but I just think it's weird that you can't have your say without people going, ugh. James, but I want to moan. Go. No, I really don't mind. I have no issue. I have no issue with people having their say about Moyes, to be honest. Anthos, I still love you. Thank you. I'm Moyes out, but you don't have to be. Peter, that is the fun. People having different views. All the fun of sport. Exactly. Barney, respect's a wonderful thing. Absolutely. Garino. Yeah, but what have the Romans ever done for us? Great film, Garino. Funky T. We at least have to give him a season to get the virtually. Oh, you've done that. So you got this right. We at least have to give him a season to get the virtually new team working. Yeah. Let's see where we are at the end of the 23-25 season. God, I was like 34, 28 or whatever it was you said. People who want instant results need to be realistic. Absolutely. Adam Cook. Let's stop moaning and get behind the team. We need to do better on the pitch as before the World Cup where we were poor. And I even started to lose faith. But Moyes is a manager, so support him. Yeah, absolutely. And then we're going into they built the roads and the aqueducts. Absolutely. Keith, I think it's pretty fair to say that as West Ham fans, we would hope that DM can turn it around. Do I think he will? Sadly not. But I'm sure as hell hope so. Surely none of us want him to fail. Of course. Well, I don't know, Keith. I think some people do want him to fail. Howard, still, there are lots of Moyes out channels, negative channels out there. I'm a glass half full and have realistic expectations. West Ham till I die. Love the show. Love it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's not worth it. You don't need to justify your point. Okay, I appreciate that. We all have different opinions. None of us really know the truth. It's all part of the fun to have a healthy West Ham discussion. Absolutely. Daniela, I left some of the Moyes out channels due to what you said. No balance in discussion. I try to get a balance. I really do. I don't know if I succeed. Sometimes I don't. Bill, diversity of opinion is what the channel's all about. Absolutely. Trudge, the Moyes out channels become repetitive too quickly. I want to ask a question. What if Moyes does turn it around pretty quickly? What are those channels going to have to talk about? Moyes in. Peter, if everyone thought the same, we'll all be like lemmings. Absolutely. Peter, well said regarding balance spending. Absolutely. Look on the bright side. You never know what's going to happen. WHU, personally, I would like Moyes to leave, but I don't subscribe to this or other West Ham channels because of an alleged bias either way. To me, still, thank you. I really do appreciate the support. I didn't do that to get these sorts of comments, but thank you. I do appreciate it. Adam, let's see how we play in the next 4 weeks. I think we can get better, but it's been silly mistakes that have cost us. That is very true. We need to cut them out and the wins will start to come and we'll move up the league. I agree. Look, let's put it in perspective. There are games we've played absolutely shit. Really, really awful. There are games we've been really, really unlucky. Really unlucky. I mean, Liverpool, we missed a penalty. Chelsea, a disallowed goal. Nottingham Forest, we missed a penalty. Those maybe another 2 or 3 points would have put us, maybe 13th or something like that. Would we be having the same conversations then? I don't know. Graham, your support for our current manager or future manager is totally valid and understandable. Thank you. Amit, a democracy, absolutely. Teacher, good evening to you. What's happening with Soufal? Any chance he's staying? Well, I don't think he's going anywhere, to be quite honest with you. That's a good point to go on to the last part of the show. And it's back. Transfer stories galore. Now, there are loads of transfer stories, but what we've been told, what we understand is there's no money. There is no money. And if there is, there's not a lot of it either, to be quite honest with you. It's very little money out there to be had. The main business was done in summer. We spent 150 odd million pounds. Now, in fairness, I actually think with the current squad, forget about the quality of play by some players. I think currently with the current squad, we have enough players in it to cover. The problem has been, as some of you guys have already mentioned, is that some of these players have not been turning up. Bowen has had an awful first half of the season. Souček, he's had an awful year and a half, give or take. I think our defence has been pretty poor. And there've been a number of problems. You know, I'm not buying into this Scamacca's rubbish, another Elair. What I'm buying into is not being supported. And that is the manager's fault. The manager bought him. So the manager should be using the talent around him to support him, to make him successful, to make him a better player. So there have been problems. But in terms of numbers, we've got more than enough players. We've got more than enough players to cover. So it would not surprise me one bit if we didn't bring any players in the January window. Wouldn't surprise me at all. David Moyes has already said before he doesn't like dealing in the January transfer window. And if he does, he'd rather look at loans rather than purchases. And I think I get that. I think Moyes wants to do his business in the summer, you know, when the going rates are better, etc., etc. So I'm not kind of expecting too much activity in the January transfer window, but that doesn't stop the stories. But this one is a bit more than the story, because we've had it confirmed even on the West Ham United website that we have now signed Luzal. He's our player, and it surprises me not one bit that he's actually going into the development squad. For those of you who may have watched some of my other shows, I've been talking about Luzal for something like about 4 weeks now, 4 or 5 weeks, something like that. And the more I've read about him, he sounds really, really promising. But this player has only broken into the Sao Paulo team in May. He only got his senior debut earlier this year. So that leap, and he's played something like 18 games for Sao Paulo. And he's coming to the end. He was coming to the end of his contract at the end of January. We've done a deal to bring him in at the beginning of January, and we've signed a nominal fee for him because what Sao Paulo wanted, they wanted a better deal, etc. But they weren't in a bargaining position because the player would have walked away from the club at the end of his contract in the end of January anyway. So we've done a deal. It sounds as if the deal is a nominal fee, but I think there's also a sell-on fee. I can't remember the value. I think it's 15% sell-on if we ever sell the player. This is a new approach for West Ham United, a brand new approach. And this is the basis of the show that I'm going to put out tomorrow, about how West Ham are now looking beyond the domestic market and maybe even beyond Europe to look for some of the best talent or the most promising talent around the world. And they started off in Brazil, and there's talk about maybe Rob Newman creating scouting networks around other parts of the world as well. You know, that it'd be good for him to sort of look at Africa and some of the rising talent through there as well. But we've got the first one started up, and that's in Brazil. And Luzal is the end product of that, or of the starting of this sort of new process. And it doesn't surprise me that he's going into the development team. Like I said, he only broke into the Sao Paulo team earlier this year, 18 appearances, looking a real prospect. He's going to go into the development team probably for the rest of the season. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if he then goes out on loan elsewhere in order to get game time. Bit like what Longello's doing and Okoflex are doing and so on. He's signed for a 3.5-year deal till 2026. And like I said, we got him for next to nothing because he would have walked away from Sao Paulo anyway. He's a prospect, and from what I've read about him, from what I've seen him, I've not seen him play. You know, I can only go by the scouting reports that are available on this player. He sounds like a bit of a beast, a proper no nonsense central defender, left-footed, who can also play left back. But looking at his stats, I haven't seen that many games that he actually played in a left back position. So he's one for the future. He's interesting. Will he come into the team here and now? I think no. Would he come into the team at the beginning of next season with the possibility of Dawson leaving either in January or at the end of the season as an Ogbonna being out of contract as well? Maybe, just maybe. There's a chance of that, but I think it might be more likely that Luizão may go out on loan. Now, the new way of thinking is, even if he doesn't play, if he's a good prospect, I think what West Ham are thinking is they're catching up with an awful lot of other teams around where they buy young talent from around the globe, have them in their team, build up their profile, start being worth more, and quite possibly selling them on for a profit to self-finance the transfer system. That's a new. A lot of teams have been doing it. Chelsea have done it. Various other teams do it around Europe, etc. And we're kind of catching up. And I wonder if maybe Luizão, even if he doesn't play a lot for West Ham, might be that kind of future planning for the club. Who knows? Another player that we've been rumored to be linked with is Pablo Maia, also from Sao Paulo. Now, I've asked about this, and the response I got was, we don't even know who he is from the club. Now, I don't believe that. Of course, you bloody well know who he is. Is there a likelihood that we'll sign him? I don't know. I think he's an interesting prospect. He's someone, I spoke about a few weeks ago, and then it all went a bit quiet. But his agency, I think, are playing quite an interesting game. I think the agency, 4Com, have other notable Brazilian footballers on their books, primarily Anthony, who recently joined Man United, Gabriel Barbosa, who we're perpetually linked to, but never seem to buy him, and Lucas Moura from Spurs. They're their three biggest players, and then Pablo Maia comes in next. Now, they're valuing him at 9 million. He's probably not worth much more than 5 at best. But he's another player that won't be, that will soon leave the club. He's got a contract until 2023, 20 years of age. My understanding of him is he's a beast in midfield. He's a really skillful footballer, a proper, no-nonsense central defensive midfielder who's got the ability to get the ball, win the ball, and start attacking play. Good vision, good passing ability, etc., etc. And my understanding also is a number of Premier League teams have bid for him. Nottingham Forest are interested, is my understanding, as well as Southampton, and I think there are one or two other clubs. The agent have said, well, they're in no rush to sell the player, see how things pan out. I think what they're doing is they're trying to build a bidding war for him to see who's going to come out there and put some hard cash on the table. Interesting, we're looking at the possibility of Declan leaving West Ham United at the end of the season if we do sell him, and we do need a player that's going to come in to take that mantle. This guy is interesting. He sounds like a very promising player. He's had quite a number of appearances for Sao Paulo, far more than Luizão has. And he's very, very highly rated. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. Do I think we would buy him? Possibly, but I'm not so sure it'll happen. I think clearly the agent wants more money for him than he's probably worth, but I think it's quite interesting that the rumor kind of came up about 5-6 weeks ago. It died down. Now it's come back again. I think Fulham, actually. Fulham, Nottingham Forest. Did I say Fulham already? And one other team from the Premier League are looking at the possibility of buying him. Do we stand a chance? Oh, and Southampton. Do we stand a chance? I don't know. It depends on what David Moyes wants in terms of what he thinks the priorities are. I'm not so sure he thinks there's a priority in central midfield at the moment. And another area that I think we all think that there's a priority. I'm not so sure, again, that Moyes thinks there is a priority for a right back. And of course, we're looking at the story of Aaron Wan-Bissaka. It's come up again. The understanding is that we're looking to loan him out. Man United, from my understanding, is they don't want to loan him out. They'd rather sell him. And the price tag they've got on him is around about £20 million. Now, we don't have that money to buy a right back in the January transfer window. I don't think David Moyes is gonna spend that much money. I think if he is available on loan, it's quite possible. I think the only other, couple of other problems with this is Wan-Bissaka's salary is just under 100 grand a week. It's quite a lot more. Man United can afford it. West Ham United could possibly afford it. For a right back, probably not. I doubt it very, very much. Look, I think he's a great player. I just don't think it's worked out for him at Man United. He's certainly not the first pick there, and I think it'll be good for us to get a player like him. A great ball carrier, good pace, exceptional pace, and I think he would really add something to West Ham. But again, I'm not so sure. And we've got this other thing with we seem to be quite well covered at right back. There's the whole thing about Soufal. I don't think he'll go. I don't know, actually. Soufal's contract ends at the end of this summer, but we've got an option on him. So I don't think there's that great urgency to get rid of Soufal in the January window. Kehrer can play at right back. I don't know what you think you prefer him to be in, as a right back or as a central defender. But again, he's an option. Then we've got Ben Johnson, of course, who hasn't been great this season, but he's been okay. But I think Johnson quite possibly will play more on the left side. I said earlier in the show, I don't think Emerson is a left back. He's much better as a wing back. If Creswell is still out, I fully expect Ben Johnson to be actually starting as a left back if we stick with a back four, rather than Emerson starting there. So I think Ben Johnson will be utilised more again on the left side. And then that leaves Harrison Ashby. So we've got 4 players there. Soufal, Kehrer, Johnson and Ashby. Now, I know we keep hearing Ashby's going to go. He's not signed an extended contract, etc. I just wonder if, even though we won't get any money for him, I wonder if Moyes will decide to keep him until the end of the season, because he was in the squad against Fulham. And if you're not in favour, then it's not likely that you'll be picked. Even if, all right, he didn't get any game time, but it actually surprised me. Ashby has been in a few senior squads of late. Excuse me. And I just wonder if maybe Moyes is trying to sort of win the player around to say to him, look, you do have a future here. You just got to bide your time. And I think Moyes would much rather have Ashby stay at the club. It's a no-brainer. Much cheaper, doesn't have to pay a transfer fee for him. But if we give him a reasonable contract, it might make the player stay. I don't know. Rather than Wan-Bissaka, who will cost us a hell of a lot of money, 20 million, even though in today's age, 20 million isn't really that much, but it will cost us more money to buy him, and his salary will certainly be a massive hindrance at just under 100 grand a week. So again, I don't think it's a priority in this transfer window. So maybe if we can get him on loan, there's a possibility. But if Man United are insisting on selling him rather than loaning him out, then I'm not so sure, to be quite honest with you, that he will be an option to buy. And the only other 2 players I'm going to talk about are up front, because I look at the team and I think to myself, goalies were okay. Defenders, yeah, if we got someone better. Dawson, of course, as we know, Craig Dawson, we has been said in the chat earlier on, if we got a replacement for him in the summer transfer window, Dawson would have been gone. And I think the same thing applies for January. If Moyes lines up a replacement for him, Dawson will be like for like. Dawson out and a player come in. And I know you're going to hate it, but I talked about Michael Keane from Everton a few weeks back, and I know it sounds crazy because he's had a really poor season at Everton last season, but I could see Moyes doing something like that. Remember the furore when we got Dawson in? It was like, what the hell's going on here? What do we need him for? What's good is he going to do? And it turned out to be a masterstroke. I don't know. Michael Keane, isn't it? Ex-England international, very, very promising player, really fallen away, really playing terribly for Everton. Could Moyes turn him around, his future around, his career around as well? I don't know. But I think if we do get a direct replacement for Dawson, we'll see Dawson go. He'll be one of the few that I think is quite likely to leave if we get a replacement. So defense, yeah, a like for like from certain places. Midfield, I don't think we really need anyone, to be quite honest with you. I think we've got enough players so long as they're used in their rightful position. And that leaves, of course, our striker situation, with Antonio being woefully out of form at the moment, and Scamacca looking like he's losing interest and not getting the support he needs. If anything, if we're going to look at a player, I think we're going to look at a striker. And there are 2 options that keep coming up again and again and again and again. Now, it's quite interesting because both these players, if we want to get them, we're going to have to buy them. And again, I'll go back to the point I made earlier on. If we buy a player, Moyes ain't going to want to spend a lot of money. So that kind of discounts, in a way, Youssef En-Nesyri. Now, look, I wasn't that enamored with En-Nesyri when I saw him play for Seville last season. I was mightily impressed with how he led the front line for Morocco in the World Cup. Looked like a completely different player. And then quite interestingly, what En-Nesyri can do is what Moyes wants. He shielded the ball. He ran after things. He's comfortable with the long ball passing. The kind of player that David Moyes loves, and he's been rating him, isn't he? As you know, David Moyes writes for the Times, and in the Times, he's been waxing lyrical about Youssef En-Nesyri, and I can see it happening. Can I see it happening in January? I'm not so sure because Seville would want around £25 million for the player. He's still contracted with them until 2025. I can see this happening in the summer. I'm not so sure unless we can strike some sort of deal, loan deal, a loan to buy deal, something like that. If that happens, I can absolutely see that occurring. A loan to buy, quite possibly. A buyout, right? Definitely not. With the money that they're asking for. And then that leads us on to Ben Brereton Diaz. It's really interesting because we've been linked to these two players for probably the last, 2 or 3 windows, give or take. And Diaz, I don't know why we didn't go in for him last summer. I don't understand it because Diaz was at the end of his last contract last summer, but Blackburn, they increased his contract. It was an automatic 1-year increase till 2023. Now, I remember when we were coming back from the game against Blackburn on the train, and it was me and Dodsey. I met him on the train and we were chatting. And some guy, a Blackburn fan, turned around and said, "You're not having him. Without him, we're nothing." And, Blackburn fans love him and they're worried about what will happen at the end of this season because it doesn't look like Brereton Diaz will extend his contract with Blackburn. So he'll be a free agent at the end of the season. Now, could we come to some deal with Blackburn and buy him in January? They're going to want about £15 million. I think that it'd be good for them to get that, given that he'll only have 6 months left on his contract. I think that would be a good deal for them. He impressed me. I wasn't sure about. I've seen him play before, but he really did impress me when he played against us. And I'm not just basing it on that, but for all his play since then, I think he'll be an interesting player to buy. I think he not only gives us an option up front, but he also gives us an option out wide as well, which I think Moyes will really, really like. They're both internationals as well, Chile and Moroccan internationals. And I think what Diaz can offer is similar to what Bowen can offer on the right, on the left side, where Bowen cuts in, takes a shot, etc. Diaz can do that from the left side. So I think they're both very, very interesting players. And after what I've seen of En-Nesyri in the World Cup, I wouldn't mind either. Can we get either of them in January? That's the big question. There probably is more chance of getting Diaz than there is of En-Nesyri, unless, as I said earlier, we can strike a deal where we can get En-Nesyri on loan with an option to buy at the end of it. Their stats, interesting stats. I think they're pretty similar. Similar number of games that they played in the senior team, similar number of goals. But Diaz has got far more assists than En-Nesyri has. But En-Nesyri throughout his career has had more injuries. He's had almost double, just over double the injuries that Diaz has had. This season, Diaz has played more games, 25 goals, a really good return, 10 goals, 3 assists. You can see how important he really is to the Blackburn team. But En-Nesyri for Seville, he's not been doing too well. He's not fared too well for them. So they're interesting. They're too interesting. Now, there are loads of other stories out there, but I'm not going to cover them. I'll cover them later in the week if I can. But they're the ones that I think are more prominent. So when I look at the team, like I said, quite possibly, if you're looking at where we need to strengthen, really, there's only one position, and that's up front. Because we've only scored, 12 goals in 15 Premier League games. We've been goal shy this season. So I think, if anything, Moyes is going to probably look more at the front line than any other place. Like I said, the only other thing, as I said, in defence, if there's a like for like, by all means, he'll do that. Dawson for whoever. And that'll be it. Don't expect too much happening in the January transfer window. I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement at all. Other players going out, there's been a hell of a lot of talk, and I think I talked about it last week. So many players that apparently we're going to lose something like half a dozen or so players. Lanzini was going to go, Soufal's going to go, etc., 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 etc. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement. Dawson might be one of the few that we might lose. Right, that's it. I'm going to go into the chat to finish off the show. Scarborough. My main problem is every Hammers channel is literally the same Moyes bashing content. Thank you. Let's scroll down. What else we got here? We're not doing live Brian anymore. We're done with that, Daniela. What have the Romans done for us? Scarborough again. Any update on Bacca? Who? Bacca who? You've lost me. You have to explain yourself, Peter. I don't know who you mean. I should know who you mean, but I don't know. Scarborough, we're still yet to see our best signings and players flourish together. It really could change quickly if they click. Absolutely. Martin, what is respectable amount of points for Moyes to get in the next 3 games? It's a hard one to say. I think if he gets a couple of draws, I think fine. You know, I don't know. I think the worst case scenario, if he gets nothing from 3 games, I think that's when we got to be really careful. Funky T, still, did season ticket holders get a Christmas gift from the club this year? Of course not. Claret and Blue Club members got a nice scar. You bastards. What's going on here? Bloody season. I've got nothing. Absolutely. Unless it's caught in the post. It might be caught in the pile up at the post offices. Lee, the loan signings have proved good in the past. That's if there's no money. But Channel said we had no money and then we spent big. Who knows? We're massive over land and sea. Apparently, we really don't have any money, is what I keep being told. Adam, we all want West Ham to succeed, but everyone loves a good moan. It's human nature. We just want our team playing well, and then we can all be happy. So I have a little moan back. Team still. That is so true. Good evening, Patrick. How are you? I now identify as a trans woman who just happens to be lesbian, but I would be open to having David Moyes' love child if needed. I'll pass that message on, mate. Debbie and Mark, Lingard was a great loan signing. Don't get me wrong. It was a big summer that we couldn't sign him and pick Forest to the post for him. But I will always be so grateful. I will always be grateful for what he did. But I thought he was a prat for what he said. That Nottingham Forest showed him more love. Seriously, how much more love could David Moyes have shown him? The man was all over him. You know, he was like virtually on his knees begging him to come back to West Ham. I don't buy into this whole rubbish about Nottingham Forest showed him more love. What a load of twaddle. Nottingham Forest showed him a lot of that love without a shadow of a doubt. Is that me being cynical? Well, yeah, usual. Next 3 games, we need 12 points. Diane Abbott accounts. Well done. The bee's knees, good evening to you. If Moyes stays, I will want him to bring us back up. If the worst happens, some key injuries too. Yeah. Well, not back up. We ain't going down. I don't want us to go down. But if Moyes stays, I want him to build us up without a shadow of a doubt. Sharky, the next Javier Mascherano or Hayden Munnings? Who? Maya? Are you talking about Maya, the young lad? I don't know. Was Hayden Mullins good? Did people like Hayden Mullins? Did Javier Mascherano get his proper chance? Fucking hell. We didn't play him. One of the best midfielders ever. Usual suspect. We went all Czech one season. Now it seems Brazilian is the country of choice. Yeah, possibly. Well, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Daniela. Did anyone see the article from Ten Hag saying we could be a threat to the top 6? I didn't actually, and I make him right. I think we sort ourselves out these niggly little things that like mistakes that lose us games. Who knows what could happen? Bill, you've got to be something extra special as a 20-year-old to play in the Premier League. I agree, mate. I absolutely do agree with you. You do, and I don't know about this player. I'm not so sure he's going to be extra special, but you know. Daniela, Man United need the cash. Well, yeah, we ain't got it to give it to them. If we can get him on loan, great. But again, a bit like the En-Nesyri thing, if we can get Wan-Bissaka on loan with a loan to buy, as well as En-Nesyri with a loan to buy, I think we'd be all over that, to be quite honest with you. I really do. Usual suspects. I'm having a wager. Potter is gone before the end of the season. I would have a little flutter on that, mate. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Sharky is particularly great at going forward, but he's still young enough to improve. I would take him. You're talking about if you're talking about Maya, or you're talking about Wan-Bissaka. Which one? Chelsea not finishing in the top 4. I'm not so sure they will. Toonami may well do, Howard. Absolutely. Adam, where are we at? How far behind? Not far behind. Adam, after last year, our defence needed to go and some midfielders needed to play better this year or get rid of them at the end of the season. So it's still a rebuild and that takes time. You're absolutely right. Do you know what? We're going to have another rebuild at the end of the season because we're going to lose at the very least something like 5 players because their contracts end. And then there's the issue of players that we might sell, like Declan Rice on top of that, who are still in contract. It is another rebuild at the end of this season. You're absolutely right. What if Potter goes? Would you have him at West Ham? Sometimes players and managers go to these bigger teams and it's just not right for them. I wonder if they do push Potter, would you take him at West Ham? Be interesting. The bee's knees. I hope Dawes stays and Ogbonna definitely need another striker. I've really grown fond of Dawson, and I think Ogbonna is one of the best defenders we've had in a long time. But I just think their days, unfortunately, have come. Third Eye. I remember the furore of what? See, I'm so far behind the chat. I don't know what you were referring to. I do apologise, Sharky, mate. You didn't have to. Thank you, voice of the voice. I really appreciate that. Thank you, mate. I'll buy you a beer if I ever meet you. Daniela, usual suspect. I think it was you can't turn. Yeah, I think it's right. What do usual suspects say? You can't turn down that offer. I think he said. If I can get that comment up, he seems out of his depth there at the moment. He seems out of his depth, but yeah, but you can't. As Daniela said, you can't turn down when you get an offer like that. It's a once in a million, isn't it? James, the Moisiah told us about his second coming, and I've got to read that carefully. The Moisiah told us about his second coming and that there were treacherous Judases amongst us. Blessed. We're still on about the life of Brian. Epic. Blackburn is third in the championship. They never sell in January when promotion is on the go. I agree. And that's another problem, isn't it? Because they much rather from promote. You're absolutely right. Promotion for them will be absolutely crucial. So if they kept him, got him to promote, to win promotion, and then he left for nothing, that's it's been well worth keeping him, wouldn't it? Even if they could get 15 million for him. You're absolutely right. Let's scroll down. Lee. Thanks, Del, my West Ham family. Another great show. Thank you, and great comments. Keep up the good work. Have a great Christmas to you as well, Lee. Thank you so much. And we are massive, even though we don't feel it at times. Funky. I hope we don't get any more players in January. We need to get the players we've got working in the first team. I meant 23-24 season. You changed that 3 times now. I think we got it, though. I think we know what you meant. Mandy, makes me smile when you... Excuse me. Makes me smile when you hear about a player who's unhappy playing the sport, earning 50 grand a week. I don't earn that in 1 year. I agree. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I do agree, Mandy. Martin, Lingard is like most footballers, full of it, not living in the real world. I got, mate, honestly, it made me laugh when he talked about Nottingham Forest showing him more love. What a pile of shit. Paul H, lots of money sloshing about for some. That's all that matters. Exactly, mate. Exactly. Martin, I wouldn't be surprised if Potter goes before the end of January. I don't know. I don't think they're that callous, are they? Well, I don't know. You never know. You never know. Potter will be my first choice. You hold me to that. Find me in the sports club and I'll buy you a beer with the £5 that you gave me. Funky T, all the Moors out people should take a look at Arteta's rebuild at Arsenal. It's taken them 3 seasons. The club stuck by him and now they're top of the league. Good point. Very good point. Neil, Potter wouldn't even be on my list. See, it's interesting. Some people, yeah, some people know. Martin, didn't realise Blackburn were doing so well in the Championship. We should watch more Championship football. Yeah, they're doing exceptionally well. And it's mostly down to Brereton Diaz. Moyes can't be compared to Arteta. They're miles apart in age and style. Good evening to you, Amstad. That is true as well. Yeah. Sharky, Big Sam. Oh, we're done there. Thank you all very, very much. I do apologize for going into a rant midway through. Didn't mean it to. I didn't mean to. It just like, sometimes something clicks. But look, as usual, much appreciated. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please do hit the like and subscribe button, etc., etc. I'll probably do a couple of pre-recorded shows, so I may not get the opportunity to wish you all a happy Christmas before then. So in advance, a very happy Christmas to you all. I'll see you before the new year, so I'll be able to wish you a happy new year before then. But thank you all for watching and supporting as usual. If you're new to the channel, please hit the like, subscribe, and bell notifications to let you know when I'm next on. If you're an old fogey that's been watching me for God knows why so long, do hit the like button. Really appreciated. Have a wonderful Christmas, a wonderful week. And of course, I'll see you all very soon. And look out for the show I'm going to put out, pre-recorded, a little bit about Moyes and his ideology, etc. But otherwise, have a great week. And thank you all for watching.